Hello, hello. Hey, everybody. Our guest today is an entrepreneur and speaker with a passion for spreading awareness for the LGBTQ plus community and the issues the community faces. He's also the creator of a signature mentorship and coaching program designed for that same LGBTQ plus community called Over the Top Living. Prior to accomplishing so much not only for himself, but others as well, Norman left his home in Chicago and relocated to Las Vegas. It was during this time in 2007 that he began his journey to finding himself. By 2008, this journey led him to the realization that he was gay. Then identifying as a gay black man, he would spend the next several years in and out of varying versions of himself. This process has spanned for over 15 years, and we're here to talk quite a bit about that. Give it up for my friend, Norman J. Liverpool IV.
My name is Brian Shinborn. I'm an explorer of people, places, and culture. In my travels, spanning over 20 countries across 4 continents, I've had the pleasure of engaging in authentic conversations with amazingly interesting people. These are their stories, on location and unfiltered. Presented by 8B Media, this is Half the City.
So what's up, man? How you doing, Norman?
I'm good. It's another day in paradise, that's for sure.
Another day in paradise. You are absolutely right, man. Now, I got to tell you, man, I've known you for quite some time. What is it, like 10?
Yeah, we met back in 2008.
Yeah, 2008. That's right. You know, when I first saw you talking about what you're up to now, I was really interested, of course, but I was also really impressed with how far you've come in the last, 12 plus years. It's really inspiring to see people growing and changing like that, because like the way I see things is everyone's we're a collection of our moments, right? We're a collection of our moments and how we respond to it. So everyone's unique, there's 8 billion people, which is why I named my company 8B Media, and everyone's got a story and everyone's perspectives and frameworks and everything like that are all unique to their experiences. So I'm interested, maybe you can kind of tell me how you went from Norman Liverpool coworker to to discovering that you're a black gay man and then kind of coming into your own a bit.
Well, it started back actually in 2007 when I moved to Las Vegas from Chicago. And a huge reason that I decided to move is because my family back home were extremely religious. And I was still trying to figure out myself. I was trying to come into adulthood. And I just didn't feel like I could do that with all of these influences around me. So I got a one-way ticket and came to Las Vegas in December of 2007. And I got the job at Metro right away. But then again, I was still like a baby, I'm 21 years old. I didn't know up from down. I didn't know what expressing myself and living as a gay man, what that actually meant. Because for so long, I was told that it was wrong. I'm going to hell, all of that. So when you and I met, I was going from one extreme to the next because I did not know where to even begin. So I remember back then, I would have long hair and carry big purses and have, all of that. And because that's what when you look at media, that's what I saw. And I did not know that I didn't have to be anything but myself. And so I spent quite some time kind of acting, if you will, trying to figure out what being gay means and what it meant for me. And so it was years of turmoil and going up and down and in and out of relationships. And it was just a lot of craziness. And then I got into property management back in 2012. And that really shifted things for me because prior to that, I was working, as you know, at Metro PCS. And then I was also a part-time bartender. And, I did drag shows and I was doing all these things. And then when property management came on the table, I didn't have time for all of that because now I'm working 9 to 5. I have really important responsibilities and duties. And so that was kind of the catalyst that kind of started a lot of this, just because it changed the way that I had to interact professionally. And then from there, I just really started doing the work. I started writing, journaling, and really doing the work to, get in touch with myself and figure out what the heck that even meant. But to be completely honest, it wasn't really until last year where things began to shift focus for me, and my vision and my purpose became a little bit more clear.
Yeah, that's interesting. I kind of similarly, like I've lived with PTSD for like almost 20 years at this point.
Right.
And because of that, I've spent a lot of time searching for myself, my purpose, and all of that as well. Right. And that took me to Vegas. It took me to Boston and New York and, China for a few years and all over the place, and just trying to find that fit, right? Like where my sweet spot is.
Right, for sure.
And it wasn't until like I'd moved up the corporate ladder and all this and that. And, at a fairly young age, in my early 30s, I was near the top of a major corporation, Jose Cuervo, living a job of, a lot of people's dreams, that sort of thing. And I was just miserable, And so it was finally at that point where I'd given up, and I'm like, you know what? This isn't sustainable for the next 30 years of my life.
Right.
I got to figure out what the hell I'm going to do with my life. Who am I? And so I started doing the work as well. I kind of locked myself in my bedroom after work and for like 2 months, and was journaling, doing skill and ability assessments and, things like that. And that kind of set me off on this path of, figuring out there's something related to communications, international stuff, that kind of thing. But even then, it took me a couple of years until I kind of finally realized that it's the storytelling stuff, right? That's the stuff that gets me. It's telling my story, it's helping other people tell theirs, that kind of stuff. But it took a long time to get there.
Yeah.
When you talk about doing the work, there's a lot to be said about that. What kind of stuff did you do? Like, did you have a process that you laid out, or was there, certain books that you read, or?
I don't necessarily know that there was a process. I just knew that I was destined for greater. And so then the work became connecting A to Z. So I'm here, but I know I need to go there. Mm-hmm. So part of that was me surrounding myself with like-minded people, but also surrounding myself with people who had already attained certain things that I wanted for myself, and professionally, personally. So, I've read books, but a lot of the work had to do with me letting go of toxic family dynamics, toxic friendships, letting go of the self shame that I had dealt with being a Black gay man, and dealing with that kind of thing. And so it was mostly internal, the work that I had to do. It was working on myself so that I could allow myself and give myself the permission to be the person that I knew that I'm destined to be.
Yeah, no, I hear that. And, like for me, so I went through I had a little bit of a process, and I kind of figured out, it was a lot of internal processing too, but it wasn't until even when I made that decision to go to China, I gave up everything. I said, hey, I've got to do something international, something communications, but I don't know what it is. I'm not leaving China until I figure it out.
Right.
It was in China that's when I got to that point where I was like, okay, give up all of these constructs that I have learned throughout my life. Give up caring about what people think about me, that sort of thing, and allowing myself just to be and to happen. Right.
Right.
And,
for sure.
And it was that, a conscious decision when everything started getting easier and everything started happening. And it was all the stuff that I've kind of always wanted to happen. I just didn't really know that I was allowed to make.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you definitely have to give yourself permission. And thing that I don't think a lot of people understand. You have got to give yourself permission to say no to everything that is not leading you to your best self and your best life. Mm-hmm. And that was really difficult for me because I'm a yes person. I want to help everyone. I want to be everything for everyone. Mm-hmm. But as my mom always says, when the airplane, when you're doing that, the kind of spiel, when you get into an airplane, they say, if the mask comes down, put yours on first. Mm-hmm. And so as the 2019 was the year of me putting my mask on first and to self-care, self-love, and even being a little bit selfish. And I know we try to steer away from that term selfish, but I really had to be. I had to be selfish with my time. I had to be selfish with the energy that I was allowing myself to put into other things. And so, it really was the year of me putting my own mask on and just kind of finding my own footing and setting some new boundaries, for others as well as myself.
Yep. Yeah, I hear that. I mean, like for me, again, so the last probably 2-3 years has been really where I've been like, okay, all the way. But it wasn't until I found that sweet spot, figured out who I was. And then once I got it, I'm like, there's no way am I letting this go. Right. Burying my head in my work, the only thing that I can do is think about this and like push this forward, that whole thing. I'm curious, just kind of back it up a little bit. You mentioned talking about living as a Black gay man, right? So like, I'm neither Black nor gay.
Okay.
So I don't understand necessarily the microcultures of those or how they are, how that intersection, that intersectional microculture might be. But I know that over the year, the last 15, 20 years has been so much progress made as far as, rights within the LGBTQ community, as well as, general acceptance and everything else that's happened over the years. I feel like there's like our society in general, is a lot more open and welcoming to people of pretty much, any intersection. I know there's a lot of work to be done.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But there's a lot of ground that's been made. So I'm just wondering, what the difference between being a gay man is maybe versus being a Black gay man, or even a gay man that grew up in those religious constructs.
So I'll tell you, I have a quote that I love, and it's from a movie called Trade that's on Amazon Prime. And it says, being a Black man in America is a reality that will never be justified. So you can imagine being a gay Black man. And so the way that I liken it is being Black, and this is just being, completely transparent, you're born with a strike against you already. Okay. Yeah. And it's the sad reality. Now, we've definitely made some strides and leaps and bounds, for more of a inclusive type of a thing. But I mean, you're born with that. You know what I mean? And I've seen it. My dad is a Black man. My uncles are Black men, and I've seen the struggle. And it's almost something that is internalized and passed down generationally. It's really bizarre. So when you're dealing with the construct of what a Black man is, there's stereotypes, there's the reality, there's all these different things that people think about being a Black man. But one of those is not being gay. Mm-hmm. Okay? So the difference for me, and this is my experience, is that it's literally like I'm wearing a scarlet letter before I even open my mouth. And I'm the type of person that people know, I can tell that I'm gay right away. I'm not, I've never been one of those people, like I've been over the top my entire life. Mm-hmm. And so to walk into a space and immediately trigger whatever people's responses are to Black people or to gay people or to gay Black people, whatever, it almost is like you have to be on the defense. And, I felt like I was having to choose what events I was going to go to. I learned how to ignore certain things so that way it didn't affect me, But to be completely honest, a lot of the stuff that I had to work through came from my family. And it wasn't so much from the outside world, which, I mean, I got that. But I think what it was is the rejection from my family and the hesitation for them to really know Norman. And so that really shaped my perspective, because I looked up to, various family members who were men, and to have them say some of the things that they said and did some of the things that they did, it showed me, okay, yeah, you're Black and gay. Because it's like, now these Black people are going to point out that you're gay. And so it's literally just having almost like feeling like a clown. Like, it's like whenever you go somewhere, it's like, oh my God, who's going to say something about this, or who's going to say something about that? And what's ironic is the whole kind of discrimination about me being gay happened well before I can consciously remember being discriminated against for being Black. And the discrimination, and again, part of it is maybe my obliviousness to discrimination as it was happening, but I don't really recall a whole lot of discrimination for me being Black when I was younger. That happened, quite honestly, within like the last 5 years.
Really?
Where I have kind of experienced some of those types of things. But the gay thing, that started long time ago. And what's funny about it is it started before I even knew that I was gay. So it was like, classmates were calling you gay or fag or whatever, and so it kind of pushed me into trying to figure out what and who I was. And it didn't happen organically, because these people were telling me, this is what you are. And so it confused the hell out of me. And it's funny, to this day, I still am in contact with one of my classmates who was the first person to call me gay. And I told him back in 2010, I said, you really messed it up for me. Because y'all didn't know what gay was, but you were putting this off on me. Now, I don't know, maybe it's because I was different. Maybe it was because I was Black. Maybe it was because I was creative and had I was good in the arts and stuff. But it really started, for me, the discrimination for me just being me. I can recall that going back all the way to 4th grade. Wow.
Okay. And because you said you're like a creative, artistic type of person, or?
Well, it was a lot of things. People didn't like me because they said I talked too white, or I talked too girly. The other kids, they didn't understand, because again, back in this time, we were the first Black family to live on our street. I was the only Black student in my class for several years. We lived, in a predominantly white Caucasian area. So yeah, it was just really crazy. And looking back at it is one of the reasons why I started Over the Top Living, because there's a lot of people that have gone through that have taken their own lives, picked up habits that are unsafe, and things of that nature. And so I want to do my part to prevent that from happening as much as possible, because it really could have gone the other way for me, because it wasn't just that I was getting it from outside. I was getting it from within my family as well. Literally forces you to a place like, okay, well, I've got to make this happen on my own. So that level of independence that kind of grew from that is what allowed me to finally branch out and do what I'm doing.
Yeah. That's amazing, man. Kids can be cruel, dude.
Yeah.
Kids can be, especially when you're not getting that love from the family either. I mean, that's it's like, where do you get a break? Where is your peace,
And the thing is too, what I've recently realized is that the various things that happened with me and my family wasn't coming from a place of malice. It wasn't, a place that I'll go back and say for my immediate family. But it wasn't coming from that. It really was coming from a place of fear. It was coming from a place of naivety. It was coming from a place of ignorance. It was coming from a place of what I see on the news is real life, and it's going to be that's what's going to happen to you. And so for a long time, I held resentment against my parents because, specifically kind of with my mom, because she now is my greatest supporter, but she was literally scared for me. It wasn't that she wanted anything bad to happen, but when all you see and hear are bad things happening to a group, and then someone that you love and care about says, oh, by the way, I'm a member of that group of people, it's almost like you go into defensive mode. You go into like mama bear. And unfortunately, with our relationship, it caused us to be estranged for a while. But now we both have done the work, and she's my biggest champion. But it was touch and go there for a while, because I looked to her to be like my source of happy, joy, all these positive things, and I experienced that from her after literally just trying to allow her to know and love the real me was very difficult.
I think it's one of those things. It's like ignorance leads to fear. Fear leads to like fight or flight, right? And but that's where a lot of the friction in the world comes from. I think it's ignorance. Yeah. Right. Like, tell you what, man. Growing up, I grew up in this small town in Michigan, right? Probably 90% white people, and a lot of them don't. A lot of those people, they live there for generations. They don't leave that little area. Right. And it's fine. It's a good life for them. They have all the things they need, friends, family, food, all that stuff. Right. But when you're not exposed to the various things that life and the world has to offer, then you don't understand it, and you don't get to humanize people or understand, cultures or anything else like that. Yeah. Then as far as it's whatever is being propagated to you from the news, right? Or whatever other source that you hear it from. And, if you don't take time to like get to know people or experience things that, are not things that you've always known or that you're used to, you don't grow. Right. I think that's kind of one of the big things here, is by kind of, I guess, educating people, but also like, getting to know people that certain listeners may not otherwise be exposed to.
Yeah. And I think that's huge, because it was kind of like my whole situation. Like when I came to Las Vegas, I came from Chicago, which is a huge city. But the way that our family construct was, it was like we did everything together and with my extended family. So my grandmother was a pastor. So my whole family, we all went to that church. And so I was very much sheltered. That's part of the reason why when I came to Vegas, I was wilding out. Right. Time, like I could do what I wanted when I wanted. I didn't have to answer to anyone. So if I wanted to go out go out with a wig on, or go out whatever it is, I was able to do that. But it really prompted me to get to know a wide variety of people. I learned tons of lessons, good and bad. And I think that you hit the nail right on the head. When we're not exposed to certain things, it's scary.
Absolutely. I go back to this thought, like when I lived in China for almost 4 years. And the first time I came back from Beijing, visited my family in Michigan, I ran into this lady that I grew up with. She was the guitarist at my church or something like that. So I knew her pretty well. I bumped into her at like this local store, and she's like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm living in China, just doing my thing." And she's like, "Oh, China? China, Brian, what are you doing there? I'm so scared for you. It's communist, blah, 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 blah,
Right.
all this stuff. Are you safe? Are you safe? Are you safe? And I'm like, yeah, it's actually, I feel just as safe there, if not safer than in America. And
Right.
people are very warm and welcoming. And, I'm having a great time over there. And she's like, oh my, I can't even believe it, Brian. I'm scared for you. And but that's the thing, because, China's, that's an example where it's the opposite side of the world.
Right.
China's always in the news, right? As the existential threat to American domination, all that kind of stuff. When all you hear is this doom and gloom or naysaying sort of things, then, that's the picture that you have painted in your mind about someone or something or whatever, right? Someplace. But until you actually expose yourself, you're never going to really know.
No, you never know. Mm-mm.
Tell me, so you said you started kind of started coming into your own in 2019. How did that start? Something about a Powerhouse Academy?
So
is that what that was?
So it actually, and I have to give credit where credit is due. It actually started a little bit prior to the Powerhouse.
Okay.
I was involved in multi-level marketing and on top of everything else I've got going on. And one of the foundations of the organization that I worked with was personal development and growth. So in addition to our sales and all of that, we would get up in the morning and be book clubs at 5 a.m. We would, we promoted healthy lifestyle. We promoted reading and writing and all of that. And that situation really put me in the room with like-minded individuals. From there is how I met Chandra Brooks, who is the founder of the Powerhouse Academy, because she was actually invited as a speaker to the group that I was working with. And, while we were talking and, I was doing some research on her and about this academy, it was specifically geared towards women. And so I didn't even think that, it was something that I could even consider. But then I began to look at Chandra's roster and I began to see the list of politicians, authors, podcast hosts, just these powerful women and high-ranking positions. They have access to all these different tables. I'm like, I need that. And I reached out to her and I'm like, whatever it is that you're giving these women in Powerhouse, I need that. And the Powerhouse Academy is a leadership and development and business coaching, mentorship, it's all of that kind of wrapped into one. And it's a 6-week program, 8-week program. Actually, we went a little bit longer, but if it wasn't for the Powerhouse, I would have never kind of honed in on exactly what my vision was. Because you can be good at a whole bunch of things, but you can't do a whole bunch of things at one time. So what the Powerhouse taught me was, okay, what are you passionate about and what are you good at? And how can we put those two things together in a package that will allow you to touch lives, allow you to make an impact, but also, allow me to make money. And so that really is that's what took it over the edge. But I was kind of already getting in that groove, and the Powerhouse just literally, it truly changed my life, because I went from the mentality of always being an employee to now being an employer. I shifted my mentality to, my limitless potential. I shifted my mentality from always being okay, being mediocre, to pushing that to become my very best.
So just kind of curious about what is the Powerhouse? You said it's an 8-week course, but are there things in there because it sounds like there was a major transformation that happened during that period.
Yeah.
Of course. Going back to that thought on process, was it the process? Was it what was that thing?
It was the process, but it was that having a coach that held me accountable. For example, if, so we would have group calls every week, we would have different subject matter every week. We'd have group calls, individual calls, and she would give us homework. And so throughout the week now, literally to this day, she still watches everything I do. If I post something on Facebook, she's like, "Oh, you need to change the words, to do this." Or, but it was really having access to the resources. That's number one, and that's why I always advocate, having a coach, because she has already been there, and so she already had a multitude of resources that I now have access to. She kept me accountable. So if I said that I was going to reach out to XYZ corporation, for a speaking engagement, or if I was, whatever it is that we had planned, she was on my ass about it. And so it basically was a catch and switch in my mentality from inactivity to activity.
From that, so like from those lessons and the shifting of the mind and the accountability and the action, how have you taken that and kind of ran with it?
Well, I have launched my speaking tour, which I've always considered myself a good speaker, and I always considered myself a wordsmith and someone that it was able to articulate. But it wasn't until I owned my whole story. And that was one of the things that Chandra pulled out of me, because I was nervous to talk about my family, to talk about my mom. One of my speaking topics is "You won't live to see 30 words from your mother." So to come out and be very transparent and vulnerable, I wasn't ready for that. But when it was put into the perspective of, Norman, there are people who need you and don't even know it yet. There are people who are waiting for the services that you're going to provide. It shifted my mindset to being a little selfless. And so I had to have a conversation with my family and say, this is what my venture is. And just so that, these things are going to come out. But it was kind of a package of the accountability, the resources, and also the other women that were in my cohort. We offered tons of support for each other. And that's really what catapulted me into wanting to speak. And then from there, she pushed me, okay, reach out to these people, reach out to these people. And so speaking engagements started coming in, things started changing, things started shifting. And that's literally how it happened. And it happened very fast.
Wow. That's awesome. So what are some of the things that you're speaking? So you talked about you won't live until 30.
Yeah. So that's one of my speaking topics. And basically that was, it just explores my family dynamic. My mother was a single mom for majority of our upbringing. And my younger sister is gay as well. And it's just two of us. Now, mind you, we didn't come out till much later. But that was challenging, because I would have to imagine as a mother, she would have seen something or been able to pick up on something. And so when I came out, she didn't think I would live to see 30. And it wasn't that she wanted me to die or, anything like that. But in her circle, the people that came out and lived an openly gay lifestyle, they were involved in things and drugs and, extremely promiscuous. And, obviously back then, AIDS was, very, it was in the spotlight, It was very new. It was newer. And so in her mind, she was just like, well, if you are going to live this way, there's no way that you're going to live past 30. And so I talk about that and talk about how our relationship has completely transformed into the beautiful mother-son relationship that we have today. My second speaking topic is Be You Boo, and it's living unapologetically and unashamed. And it's just exploring coming into your own self, accepting yourself, learning to encourage yourself. I feel like as human beings, we get so caught up in this outside validation that we don't realize that everything that we need is already inside of us. So we talk about that, and we talk about some of the over-the-top living hacks that I've kind of created, which will be, coming out in my book that'll be released later this year. But we talk about some over-the-top living hacks that you can just catch that thought and switch it to something, more productive or positive. My third speaking topic is Double Trouble, my Black experience. And so that explores my journey as a Black man who's gay. And I kind of talk about the unique challenges and how internal and external influences ultimately brought me to where I am today. And it talks about not just my professional development, but my personal development as well.
So, I mean, it sounds to me like you definitely put the work in. That's a lot of, there's a lot of deep self-reflection, working through certain kinks, that kind of stuff. Getting to that point, man, that's great, dude. You sound like a very whole person right now. Fantastic.
Yeah. For the first time.
No, it's great, man. I'm so proud of you, man. What about, so I'm also curious, because again, going back to that kind of the Black gay dynamic, as well as with the religious family, what did it take? If I talk about your mom for a second, like, what did it take for her? Like, how did she come to terms or come to grips with everything and ultimately accept you and your sister?
So it's funny you asked that, because what I'm getting ready to share with you, I just found out last week. When I came out, my sister saw how the family reacted. And at that time that I was coming out, she was going through the same things. But I found out, she just shared this with me last week, that she was terrified to come out after seeing what I had gone through. And essentially what happened is my mom basically said, I can't deal with this. I'm giving you back to God, essentially. And we didn't speak for quite some time. Now, I don't remember how long it was that we didn't speak. To me, I thought it was like 8 or 6 months. My sister said it was over a year. Because he was still living in Illinois at the time. And she shared with me that my mom's husband and my sister were one year begging and pleading my mom to call me for my birthday.
Wow.
And she just couldn't or wouldn't. But it really took, knowing what I know now, it really took my sister and my stepdad to really kind of step in and say, this is still your son. And so we started talking again. I want to say we started talking via email at first. And then, she started to come and visit. I think that what it was is when she saw that I am, as you said, a whole person. I wasn't living in a bunch of lack. I'm still the same Norman from before. And as she began to interact and insert herself more into my life, she's like, okay, these are my kids. And it was that initial shock. And I think that in some ways, now that I'm, speaking of it, she was trying to protect her heart. And so, but once she came and started involving herself in my life, involving herself more in my sister's life at the time, I think that's when it became easier for her. And it was a no-brainer at that point, because she sees, oh, wow, I raised great kids. It was definitely a process. Okay. It was a process that took years. But part of the success of this relationship is that I had to set boundaries on what I was willing to accept, what I was willing to hear, what I was willing to see, all of that. And so we had, we set these boundaries, and now we interact as mother, son, but as adults. And so it's a completely different dynamic now. And I'm really blessed that to have the support of both my parents, but I'm really, really proud of where me and my mom are today, because again, it was touch and go.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. Cause I think about every parent wants what's best for their kid. But at the same time, the reality of it is, as a parent, it's easy to get inside of this bubble. You're raising your kid for, 18 years, or whatever the case may be. And this has always been your little boy and all that stuff. And then life starts happening. right? Reality starts happening.
Mhm.
And a lot of times, parents don't really know how to respond to that. For example, like I said, I've had PTSD for almost 20 years. I was drugged and raped by a man in the military. Right. And so that's fucked me up for a long time. And my parents have known about it since early on, and they've been, try to be loving and all this stuff. But I remember it must have been like 5 years ago, I think. I was taking a road trip with my dad, and he goes, Brian, why don't you just get over it? Why don't you just let it go?
Right.
And it's, he just doesn't understand like what's going on inside of my head with experiences that I had. And, everyone's different. Some people can let things go. Some people experience a traumatic event and develop PTSD. Like that's how it works. Whether they want to try to discount you or push you away or whatever the case may be, they're always, they love you and they care for you and they want what's best for you.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of times if they're discounting it or whatever, they're just trying to like, in their own way, I think, make it right. Not that it's helpful necessarily, but
it's a sense of control that they have. And it's when you're dealing with, your parents, they want to protect us. They want to keep us safe. They don't ever want to believe that anything bad can happen to us. And when something does that is completely outside of their control, what I have found is it sends them haywire. There's something in the brain that just does not allow them to accept the fact that I don't have control over this situation. This is something that happened, is that my child is going through, and I've got to give them the space and time to move through it.
Yep.
I think that that's the biggest thing that I've learned, at least from my parents, is that it all came from a very loving place. But when you're dealing with your kids or anyone you love, sometimes that loving place can manifest itself as something completely different.
In so many ways too. I mean, there's, again, whether it's being, whether it's having a certain orientation or having, maybe you have certain beliefs about religion. Maybe you joined a church and your parents weren't, or maybe you left something or what, or also, there's countless other things that can kind of send them that way, like, oh, I was raised Catholic, right? Oh, you didn't marry a good Catholic girl or whatever, or whatever. Right. It's just so stupid. It's so stupid, but you're right. It sends them haywire. And I think it's a control thing too. And it's probably going to stay that way for the rest of time because, everyone says they're going to do things differently, but, you get wrapped up in that bubble and, it's that nurturing instincts, I think. Right.
Yeah.
But it's great that, great to hear that she was able to work through it, and finally accept you for that, man. And not only that, but like to the max, right? Like
it's crazy.
It's cheerleader, right? Like it's crazy.
And you know what? And I have to, because I know my dad is going to listen to this, and I have to give him credit all because I asked my dad on Saturday. I knew we were preparing for this, and I have some other things that I'm preparing for. And I said, Dad, how did you react when I came out? And he said, I'm still waiting. And so I didn't realize that I never officially came out to my dad. He accepted me and we rolled with it. Now, mind you, when I first moved to Vegas and I was working with you at Metro, I was living with him.
Oh, okay.
So in my mind, I thought that I would have had to have told him.
Yeah.
But no, he said, I never came out. He said, I'm still waiting. And so I just have to give him that credit and not to discount, from either one of my parents. They're both amazing, but I was really proud at that moment. And I'm proud of both of my parents because I'm proud that my dad just kind of rolled with it. But I'm also super proud that my mom worked through her own bullshit and her own stuff and her own whatever was in her mind or from society to get to where we are today.
Shout out to mom and dad. Is that 3?
What?
Is that Norman 3?
Well, yeah, that's Norman the Third.
Shout out to Big Three.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about like some of these speaking engagement stuff. That kind of shift gears a little bit. Is this all related to over the top living? Like, what is over the top living? Like, how did you get to that point and decide to create whatever what this is?
So over the top living, the way that came about, I've actually had this business name for years, probably since 2012. Just because my mom is very much like prepare, have your documents in order. And I always knew that I was over the top, but
shit, huh?
But I decided to take it from a negative and turn it into a positive. A lot of people were saying, oh, Norman is over the top. And it was in a bad way or a negative connotation. And I'm like, you're right. I am over the top. And so basically, over the top, it's multifaceted. So it's my personal brand as well as my signature mentorship program. So my speaking and basically everything I'm doing right now is some way tied to over the top living. So right now, I've recently, 2 weeks ago, I was sworn in as a member of the governing board of the Southern Nevada Health Department over their community center.
Nice. That's huge.
Yeah, huge.
That's huge, man.
That's also an extension of over the top living. My speaking engagements are an extension of over the top living. And my coaching and mentorship program is a part of that as well.
Right on, man. So how do you live over the top? Like I know you, Norman, and I know you've been, you've been over the top, extra as long as I've known you.
Yeah.
And how does one go about living over the top? Like, lay it on me.
It's two things for me, which are multi-layered, but it's a catch and switch attitude. So what I mean by that is I
Mm-hmm.
catch any negative thought or anything, and I switch something that's productive. I catch my inactivity and switch it for activity.
Mm-hmm.
But the main thing is you do the work, okay? And then once you've done the work, you live unapologetically and unashamed, period. That's how you live over the top. Your version of living over the top may not be as loud and in your face as mine. A client that I'm working with, who she's definitely over the top, but in her own way. And over the top for her was changing her mindset to that she can start her own business and do for herself. So it really is what you make of it, but it is catching and switching those negative, non-productive thoughts and behaviors for something positive and productive. It is changing the inaction for action, doing the work, and then it's just simply living in purpose, on purpose.
Love that.
It is very intentional, and it's living unapologetic and unashamed. Like you mentioned earlier, when we stop caring about what other people think. If I still cared about what people thought, I wouldn't even be able to be sitting here doing this podcast with you. Like, well, oh my God, who am I? I'm just, I'm Norman. Like, who wants to hear from me?
Yep.
But I had to throw that out the window and really just live my truth in purpose and on purpose.
Oh yeah. No, I love that. Living in purpose, on purpose. Like that's, I love that. That's a great, guidepost. What else do you want to talk about? Let's go. So you mentioned that you were on the governing board of the Southern Nevada Community Health. Like, how did this happen, dude? Like this, because that's a big deal. You're still young, right? You seem awfully young to be a board member of something so big.
Yeah, from your lips to God's ears.
How did this happen, dude? Tell me about this.
So, again, I'm gonna circle back to the powerhouse because it it has a lot to do with a lot of the things that I'm doing right now. So essentially, I was asked to be on the board, and because of, I've been in Vegas since 2007. I've, previously back in the day, I was on the Las Vegas Pride board, and, I was an entertainer. And so I know the community here very, very well. I kept saying, no, I'll think about it, or, whatever. And then the individual that had been, I don't want to say pursuing me, but had been encouraging me to join, he literally looked at me and said, "This is your community. Do you care about it or not?"
Wow.
And what was crazy about that, Brian, is when I went to get sworn in, there was nobody that looked like me on the board. There were no, wait, hold on, let me take that back. There were no Black gay men.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple gay guys. And I say gay guys, I mean, these are high-ranking, the mayor pro tem for North Las Vegas is on my board, and he's not gay, but I'm just saying these are huge, heavy hitters.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see anyone that looked like me. I didn't see the young professional. I didn't see, the young gay person. I didn't see a Black gay person. And so in that moment, I knew that I had a responsibility to be on that board. I knew it right then.
Yeah.
And so, it was, again, allowing myself the permission to be myself in this room and accept the fact that I belonged there.
That's an interesting situation too, right? Like, when you start, first of all, I'd say representation matters, right?
Yeah.
So, that's, I mean, whether it's like on screen or whatever, but like, but it also matters in the local community, right? Because that's how you tailor policies or whatever towards everybody, being inclusive like that. It starts there. But also, like, when you're in the right spot, right? Like it's like when you're in the right spot, things they work, right? So in addition to this, I'm developing some other projects, film and TV and stuff like that. And over the last couple of years, I've been introduced to a lot of award-winning producers. I did an event with some professional athletes, and and the amazing thing to me is that stuff all started happening once I figured out what my path was, my purpose, right. And everything started coming together. And I meet these people, and we just hit it off, man. Like whether it's these producers or these celebrities or these professional athletes, we just hit it off, man. And it's good. It's the creative juices flowing. It's respecting each other. It's having a good time. But it's just a fit.
Yeah.
And I mean, I even think like back to when we worked at Metro, shout out to Metro PCS.
Right.
Shout out to Metro. But when we were working there, like I struggled, man. Like, I could do the work. I got along with a couple of people, but I fucking hated it. And I was a cog in the machine, and that's how it was most of the way through my corporate career before I decided to go and never work for anybody again. But it was that point, right? Like, once I did the work, I changed my mindset on a lot of things, and figured out what my thing was, and that's, again, everything starts falling into place, and then you realize you're standing around maybe an event or something, and you're looking around, and you're like, I'm surrounded by a bunch of high-profile, powerful people, and guess what? They're treating me as one of them.
Right, because you are, and that's the crazy thing about it.
And you're like, really? Like,
yeah.
Me? Hold on a second. It's just me? Come on.
Yeah. It's crazy that the rooms that I'm in now just by aligning myself with my purpose, and before I had even spoke, they booked me for the graduation in May. It's just,
oh, sweet.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I'll be the keynote speaker at the Lavender graduation May 1st. It's just the rooms that I'm in and the tables that I'm at now are really positioning me to do some huge good, not just for the LGBTQ community. I mean, as that's my focus, but I mean, for everybody.
Big respect to that, dude. And I mean, I'm not sure if you know, but like, so again, going back to my PTSD stuff, like I'm also in the process of I'm writing a book. I'm developing a show around my experiences with that. I've done a lot of work on myself. I've worked through a lot of it. I still live with it. I've learned to manage it. But the problem with like PTSD, for example, is that, so many people have it and nobody ever wants to talk about it. Right. So even by just saying, okay, you know what? Hey, I'll come talk about it. I'll write a book about it. I'll make a show about it or whatever. For me, I'm trying to help those people because, like, let's face it, in the military, I mean, there's a number, it's number 22. There's 22 military active duty or veterans that kill themselves every single day. And a lot of it has to do with PTSD related stuff.
Wow.
And and those are things like, those are internal battles that you're fighting with yourself every day. Right. Nobody wants to talk about the event because it's the most horrific day they've ever experienced. Right. And because they don't want to talk about it, but their family and other, medical professionals, whatever, they don't know how to respond. And it's just kind of it's a like a downward spiral kind of sort of thing, right? It's an opposite of a virtuous cycle.
Right. No, for sure.
It's just all bad. And, like for me, just even be able to kind of talk about stuff like that, and I've been told by some people that, doing what I'm doing is going to save lives.
Oh, I believe it.
I mean, that's kind of what keeps me going. But still, I'm just like, wow, like, I've been living with this for damn near 20 years. I could have done something about this long before that. But I think you have to wait until you become that whole person, right? Until you work through your stuff. And, if you're the type of person that wants to have that type of focus or platform, you've got to wait until the time's right.
Oh, right? You have to. You have to. Timing is so crucial because, especially doing what you're doing, it's emotional and constant, because not only are you living with it and managing it, but you're talking about it and you're sharing it consistently. And so if you're not in a mental or emotional place to manage that also, it actually does more harm than good.
Right. And so that's exactly right. Like I've had other people that have had similar situations than me, like reach out to me that I've never met before. And they're like, oh, I want to share my story. I'm like, no, you don't. And I'm like, not no, you don't, but you don't right now. Like take some time, process through this stuff, try to get some sort of grip on it. And then you can make the decision if you want to share it or not. You can if you want, you don't have to either way.
Right.
But somebody's got to talk about various situations, because that goes back to the exposure thing, right? If we're not exposed to it, we don't know about it. And that which we do not know, we fear. That which we fear, we cause harm to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm just over here doing my little part.
Well, you know what? I'm glad that you are, because especially learning that figure of the military personnel that take their own lives, that's huge. And I'm glad that you're here to tell it.
Yeah. Appreciate it, man. I think we're at a pretty good spot to wrap it up. I think it feels pretty natural.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else you want to talk about before we wrap it up?
Yeah, no. I'm just, I just want to get across, from everyone that can hear me, you are enough. I want to challenge you. That thing that you've been putting off, that thing, that book that's been in the back of your mind, that song that you've been wanting to write, that business venture, that contact that you've been wanting to reach out. I want you to be intentional with that. I want you to begin to live in purpose and on purpose, and then just do you. As I say, do you, boo, and live unapologetically and live unashamed in your truth.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. Anything else you want to plug?
So definitely all day long, I will always plug the Powerhouse Academy. You can go to chandra-brooks.com, or you can just YouTube Powerhouse Academy. It's all over there. And then also over the top, we will have our official launch on April 18th here in Las Vegas. I'm really excited about that. Our website is currently under construction just so that we can bring some, fresher content. Just, you can follow me on Instagram at the Mr. Liverpool. I'm on Facebook, Over the Top Living. So I just invite any of you that, even if you have any questions, just to feel free to be able to connect with me on my speaking engagements, my speaking tour, or on my signature mentorship program. Right on, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate the time as well. Sure. Been a good one, good catch up, and learned quite a bit, man. I'm really, like I said, I'm really proud of the person you've become over the last few years, man. You really come into yourself. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you. Give it up for my friend Norman Liverpool, everyone.
You've been listening to Half the City with Brian Shinborn, presented by 8B Media. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your friends, and leave a solid 5-star review to ensure these stories get spread far and wide. For more information, as well as to listen to other shows, including Relentless, a survivor's search for passion, purpose, and inner peace, and Beyond Relentless, be sure to check out 8bmedia.com. Thank you for listening.